When I speak of this life, I sometimes call it the Shadowlands. It is not to belittle the world in which we walk, for it holds beauty enough to move us to tears, but rather to name it rightly. A land of shadows, outlines, and echoes. Everything here seems to carry a strange dual nature, glorious yet incomplete, radiant yet fragile. The sunrise thrills us, yet fades too quickly. Love fills our hearts, yet trembles under the fear of loss. Every pleasure is mingled with impermanence, every joy with a shadow of grief. It is as though this world whispers of a country beyond itself, one whose substance is hinted at, but never fully grasped here. And so we find ourselves, like children playing at the edges of a great forest, catching glimpses of the deeper reality just beyond the veil. This life, my friends, is not the destination. It is the preparation. The truth is that we were not made for shadows, but for substance. We were not designed for echoes, but for the eternal voice from which they spring. All that is most dear to us in this life, love, beauty, joy, friendship, is not an end in itself, but a signpost pointing beyond itself. A flower is lovely, not merely because of its color and fragrance, but because it awakens in us a desire for a beauty greater still, one that no withering petal can destroy. A friendship is precious not only because of shared laughter, but because it awakens in us the hope of a communion deeper and everlasting, untouched by death. Yet how easily we mistake the signpost for the destination. We cling to the joys of earth as though they could last forever, and when they are taken from us, we despair. But if we remember that this world is a place of preparation, then even loss may be seen in a new light. The fading of the flower, the passing of a friend, the decline of health, the weakening of strength, all these are but reminders that the Shadowlands cannot contain us forever. They teach us not to anchor ourselves too firmly in the soil of earth, lest we forget that our true homeland lies elsewhere. Consider the image of a mirror. When you stand before it, you see a likeness of your face, but not the face itself. The mirror is not false. It reflects truly, but it is not the reality. In the same way, this world reflects the goodness of God, yet it is not God Himself. It gives us the taste, but not the feast. We walk here as pilgrims, tasting crumbs that fall from the table of eternity, so that when at last we arrive, we may recognize the banquet for what it is. This is why suffering, perplexing though it is, must also be part of our preparation. Pain awakens us from our illusions. It strips away the lie that the Shadowlands are sufficient in themselves. If joy hints at heaven, then sorrow reminds us that we are not yet there. When our hearts are broken, we learn that they cannot be mended by anything less than eternity. When we grieve, we discover that love cannot die, and so we begin to long for a place where love is no longer threatened by separation. Thus, even our tears become tutors, pointing us toward the eternal dawn. It is not only sorrow that prepares us, but also duty, sacrifice, and the quiet choices of each day. This world is a training ground for the soul, much as a musician must practice before the concert, or a soldier must drill before the battle. Each act of forgiveness, each resistance against temptation, each moment of generosity, is like a note rehearsed, a discipline strengthened, a step taken toward our true destiny. We may think these small things unnoticed, but they shape us for eternity. For what is character but the sum of our daily choices, pressed into us until they become the grain of the soul. Let us imagine, for a moment, a child in the womb. There, in that dark and confined space, the child's lungs expand and contract, though he has never breathed air. His eyes form, though he has not seen the sun. His limbs stretch, though he has not walked upon the earth. Everything in that hidden life is preparation for a world he cannot yet conceive. So it is with us in the Shadowlands. Our love, our hope, our faith, even our suffering, all these are preparing us for a world we can scarcely imagine, though we catch glimpses of it in every joy and echo of beauty here. If we take this view, life becomes less a tragedy of fleeting days and more a pilgrimage of becoming. The transience of things does not depress us. Rather, it fills us with holy anticipation, for every fleeting sunset promises an unending dawn. Every fading song hints at a music without end. Every broken heart aches for a love beyond the power of death. And so, I would urge you not to despise the Shadowlands. Though they are not our final home, they are necessary. For only here, in the half-light, can faith be forged. Only here, in the mingling of joy and sorrow, can hope learn to stretch its wings. Only here, in our faltering love, can we learn the first steps of a dance that will one day be perfected in eternity. The shadows may trouble us, but they are not without purpose. Indeed, they prepare us for the light itself. If the Shadowlands are truly a place of preparation, then we must also see them as a school for the soul. The lessons may be subtle, sometimes even severe, but they are not wasted. Each moment, even the most ordinary, carries within it the seed of eternity. A kind word spoken when it is difficult, a temptation resisted in the silence of one's own heart, an act of patience offered when anger would be easier. These are the daily exercises that shape the eternal self. You see, we are not simply passing time. We are becoming a certain kind of creature. Every decision nudges the soul, however slightly, toward one of two directions, toward the light of God, or away into the cold shadows. It is never neutral. A man does not remain the same after an encounter with truth, beauty, or goodness. He either responds to it with openness, thereby enlarging his soul, or he shrinks from it, hardening the heart. Slowly, imperceptibly, we are being formed into what we shall forever be. I have sometimes compared this to the carving of a statue. The sculptor begins with a rough block of stone. Each strike of the chisel seems destructive, breaking, shattering, removing. But the artist sees what the stone cannot. He envisions the beauty hidden within, waiting to be revealed. So it is with God in the Shadowlands. Our trials may feel like blows, our sufferings like loss. But if we could glimpse what He intends to shape, we would bear them more gladly. For He is carving us into the likeness of Christ, and no labor is too great for so glorious an end. The strange paradox is that the more we prepare for heaven, the more truly we live on earth. Those who remember that this life is but the vestibule of eternity are not made weaker or less joyful, but more courageous, more patient, more alive. For they know that the worst the world can do is only temporary, while the best is but a foretaste of what is to come. Such a soul can endure suffering without despair and enjoy pleasure without clinging, for both are seen in their proper light, preparation, not finality. Think again of shadows. A shadow, by its very nature, cannot exist apart from the light. It is a sign of something greater, a reminder that substance is near. When we gaze upon the beauty of a meadow, the laughter of a child, or the touch of a friend's hand, we are experiencing shadows of the greater joy. When we face sorrow, loneliness, or grief, we are encountering shadows cast by a greater hope. In both, if we have eyes to see, there lies a summons. Look beyond. This is not all. But we are often tempted to linger too long upon the shadows, as though they were the light itself. We clutch at them, fearing they will slip away, and in our clinging, we sometimes miss the very lesson they were meant to teach. We must learn to let them point us onward, just as a traveler reads a road sign not to embrace the sign itself, but to follow where it leads. Perhaps it is here that faith does its most vital work. Faith is not the denial of the Shadowlands, nor is it a demand that they be brighter than they are. Rather, faith is the trust that the light behind the shadows is real, even when unseen. It is to believe that every tear will be wiped away, not because the shadows are pleasant, but because they will one day be dispelled by the sunrise. Therefore, let us live as apprentices of eternity. Let us take our joys with gratitude and our sorrows with hope, for both are tools in the hands of the Master. Let us remember that the Shadowlands are not meaningless corridors, but hallways leading us into the very presence of God. If we live with this awareness, then even the humblest day is charged with significance, and even the darkest night glimmers with promise. For the truth remains. This world is but a place of preparation. It is not the end of the story. It is the prologue to the great story, the story in which every chapter is better than the one before, and the shadows give way at last to the everlasting light. If we think carefully, we will see that the Shadowlands are not merely a waiting room for heaven, but a place where our very capacity for heaven is being enlarged. A soul untrained, untested, would not be able to bear the weight of eternal glory. Just as eyes unaccustomed to sunlight squint painfully when dawn first breaks, so the unprepared heart would falter before the radiance of God. This life, then, is a slow schooling in vision, teaching us to endure the brightness by degrees, to open our sight wider and wider, until at last we may look fully upon Him without fear. This is why even the smallest virtues matter so deeply. Patience in the face of irritation, gratitude when blessings seem few, humility in times of praise, these are not trifles. They are exercises, strengthening the soul for the eternal day. Heaven will not change us into something utterly alien. Rather, it will complete what was begun here. The Shadowlands are the seedbed, and eternity the flowering. Think of a singer rehearsing. The scales, the breathing, the hours of repetition. All may seem dull, even wearisome, yet without them, the voice would crack when it matters most. Our lives here are much the same. Endless rehearsals for the music of heaven. Every struggle against selfishness, every act of courage, every prayer uttered in faith, however feeble, is a note in the great composition. And when the curtain rises at last, we shall find that the orchestra was never practicing alone, for the Spirit has been shaping every movement, conducting every phrase, preparing us for the harmony of eternity. But the Shadowlands also serve another purpose. They awaken our longing. Were this world perfect, were all desires fully satisfied here, we would forget that there is a homeland beyond the horizon. It is precisely because the joys here are incomplete that we continue to search. It is because love is tinged with the ache of parting that we yearn for the unbreakable union. It is because beauty fades that we hunger for the imperishable. This sense of exile, of holy homesickness, is itself a mercy, for it keeps our gaze turned heavenward. Yet, let us not despise the shadows simply because they are not the light, for shadows have their own beauty. They teach us contrast. They make us aware of form. They remind us that light exists. To live in the Shadowlands is not to live in falsehood, but in foreshadowing. What we experience here is real, yet partial, good, yet preparatory. Like the sketch of an artist, it is not the finished painting, but it reveals what is to come. And so we stand at the threshold, each day learning, each sorrow shaping, each joy beckoning us further. If we live with this awareness, the Shadowlands cease to be a place of despair and become instead a place of holy anticipation. The shadows remind us that the substance is near, that the author is still writing, that the play has not yet reached its climax. One day the curtain will rise. One day the dim outlines will give way to the radiance of reality. And when that day comes, we will see that every trial was preparation, every longing a compass, every shadow a guidepost. The Shadowlands are not the end, but the beginning. If the Shadowlands are indeed a place of preparation, then our task here is not merely to endure them, but to use them wisely. The danger is that many souls drift through these years without realizing what is at stake. They busy themselves with trifles, chase after vanities, and mistake the shadows for the substance. They cling to pleasures as though they could not perish, and they fear losses as though they could undo the eternal. But if we awaken to the truth that every shadow conceals a light, every trial holds a lesson, every joy points beyond itself, then our days take on a gravity and a radiance that the careless never see. We are like travelers in a twilight country. The dimness confuses us, and yet it also stirs our longing. We stumble, yes, but each stumble reminds us that the road is real, and that it leads somewhere. The Shadowlands are not a dead end. They are a passage. And the discipline of hope is precisely this, to keep walking forward, even when the mist hides the horizon. Notice, too, that preparation is never solitary. We are shaped not only by our private choices, but by the web of relationships in which we dwell. Love itself is the great rehearsal for heaven. For in heaven we shall not be isolated spirits, each circling in private bliss, but a communion of saints bound together in perfect charity. Thus, every act of friendship, every sacrifice for another, every moment of forgiveness is training for eternity. When we love, we are practicing the language of heaven. When we forgive, we are learning the melody that angels sing. Yet, we must be honest. Love in the Shadowlands is often mingled with pain. To love is to risk loss, to open oneself to wounds. But here again is preparation, for only by enduring the cost of love can we be made fit for the love that never ends. The Shadowlands teach us that love is not mere sentiment, but sacrifice, and in so doing, they carve out in us a capacity to receive the eternal embrace of God Himself. There is also the danger that we mistake preparation for permanence. The unborn child might suppose the womb to be his entire world. He cannot imagine air or light or the touch of his mother's face. Yet the contractions and the pressures that come upon him are but the signals that a greater world awaits. So it is with us. Death, which seems to us the great calamity, may in truth be the final contraction that ushers us into life. The Shadowlands, with all their pressures and labors, are not cruel. They are the pangs of a greater birth. Therefore, let us not shrink from the shadows, nor despise the lessons they teach. For if we receive them rightly, they fit us for glory. And when at last the veil is lifted, we shall look back and see that even the darkest valleys were pathways leading us home. The Shadowlands are but a season, but they are a holy season. They are the place where eternity is sown, the place where the image of God in us is refined, the place where longing ripens into hope. One day the shadows will flee, and we shall find ourselves standing in the country of the real, the land for which we were made, the dawn that knows no setting. We must remember that the Shadowlands, though often dim, are not devoid of meaning. They are charged with it. Every moment of our earthly pilgrimage is weighty, not because it endures forever, but because it is shaping what will. This fleeting life is like the apprenticeship of the soul. It passes quickly, yet its lessons remain eternally inscribed. Consider how a craftsman learns his art. In the early days, the strokes of his chisel are clumsy, the lines uneven, the product imperfect. Yet, with patience, practice, and correction, his skill grows until his hands move with a grace that once seemed impossible. So too with us. In the Shadowlands we stumble, we err, we falter. Yet each effort at virtue, each act of repentance, each prayer whispered in faith, forms the soul more fully in the likeness of its Maker. It is not perfection here that matters, but direction. This is why despair is the most dangerous of temptations. For despair whispers that the shadows are all there is, that light is a dream, that preparation is futile. But to despair is to forget that every shadow requires a source of light. Even when unseen, the sun is there beyond the horizon. So too, God is present beyond our sight, shaping us in ways we do not always perceive. To live without hope is to deny the very purpose of the Shadowlands. And what of joy? Some imagine that joy is merely a distraction, a pleasant interlude before the next sorrow. But I tell you, joy is a glimpse through the veil. It is as though heaven, in mercy, sometimes allows its fragrance to drift into this twilight world. When we experience pure joy, whether in the laughter of children, the beauty of music, or the quiet of a starlit night, we are not escaping reality. We are touching it. Such moments awaken a hunger that nothing in this world can satisfy, and that hunger is itself preparation for the feast to come. In this sense, joy and sorrow are twin instructors. Joy teaches us what to hope for. Sorrow reminds us where to hope. Together, they shape us for a reality beyond the Shadowlands. To reject either is to refuse the lessons of the school in which we have been placed. Now, it is natural to ask why the preparation must be so long, so hard, so filled with contradiction. Could not God simply perfect us in an instant? Perhaps He could. But then we would not be free creatures, shaped by love and choice. We would be mere automatons, hollow and untested. The Shadowlands provide the stage on which freedom is exercised, love is chosen, faith is proved. Without them, eternity would not be the flowering of a willing heart, but the imposition upon an unwilling one. And God desires not slaves, but sons and daughters. Therefore, let us embrace this life with both reverence and detachment. Reverence, because it is the training ground of the soul. Detachment, because it is not the final country. To treat the Shadowlands as ultimate is idolatry. To treat them as nothing is ingratitude. The right view is to see them as a bridge, treasured for the passage they give, but not mistaken for the shore itself. When at last we cross the bridge, we shall awaken to find that the shadows have served their purpose. They will fall away, not as falsehoods, but as the outlines that guided us to the real. And standing in the presence of the light himself, we will say not that we have left life behind, but that at long last we have truly begun to live. We must remember that the Shadowlands, though often dim, are not devoid of meaning. They are charged with it. Every moment of our earthly pilgrimage is weighty, not because it endures forever, but because it is shaping what will. This fleeting life is like the apprenticeship of the soul. It passes quickly, yet its lessons remain eternally inscribed. Consider how a craftsman learns his art. In the early days, the strokes of his chisel are clumsy, the lines uneven, the product imperfect. Yet, with patience, practice, and correction, his skill grows until his hands move with a grace that once seemed impossible. So too with us. In the Shadowlands we stumble, we err, we falter. Yet each effort at virtue, each act of repentance, each prayer whispered in faith, forms the soul more fully in the likeness of its Maker. It is not perfection here that matters, but direction. This is why despair is the most dangerous of temptations. For despair whispers that the shadows are all there is, that light is a dream, that preparation is futile. But to despair is to forget that every shadow requires a source of light. Even when unseen, the sun is there beyond the horizon. So too, God is present beyond our sight, shaping us in ways we do not always perceive. To live without hope is to deny the very purpose of the Shadowlands. And what of joy? Some imagine that joy is merely a distraction, a pleasant interlude before the next sorrow. But I tell you, joy is a glimpse through the veil. It is as though heaven, in mercy, sometimes allows its fragrance to drift into this twilight world. When we experience pure joy, whether in the laughter of children, the beauty of music, or the quiet of a starlit night, we are not escaping reality. We are touching it. Such moments awaken a hunger that nothing in this world can satisfy, and that hunger is itself preparation for the feast to come. In this sense, joy and sorrow are twin instructors. Joy teaches us what to hope for. Sorrow reminds us where to hope. Together, they shape us for a reality beyond the Shadowlands. To reject either is to refuse the lessons of the school in which we have been placed. Now, it is natural to ask why the preparation must be so long, so hard, so filled with contradiction. Could not God simply perfect us in an instant? Perhaps he could. But then, we would not be free creatures, shaped by love and choice. We would be mere automatons, hollow and untested. The Shadowlands provide the stage on which freedom is exercised. Love is chosen. Faith is proved. Without them, eternity would not be the flowering of a willing heart, but the imposition upon an unwilling one. And God desires not slaves, but sons and daughters. Therefore, let us embrace this life with both reverence and detachment. Reverence, because it is the training ground of the soul. Detachment, because it is not the final country. To treat the Shadowlands as ultimate is idolatry. To treat them as nothing is ingratitude. The right view is to see them as a bridge, treasured for the passage they give, but not mistaken for the shore itself. When at last we cross the bridge, we shall awaken to find that the shadows have served their purpose. They will fall away, not as falsehoods, but as the outlines that guided us to the real. And standing in the presence of the light himself, we will say not that we have left life behind, but that at long last we have truly begun to live. If we are honest, the Shadowlands often bewilder us. They are filled with contradictions that, at times, appear irreconcilable. Beauty and decay live side by side. Laughter is pierced with sorrow. Love is shadowed by loss. And yet, it is precisely these tensions that form the crucible of preparation. Were this world too comfortable, we would mistake it for home. Were it too unbearable, we would lose heart before the journey's end. Instead, it is balanced on a knife's edge, sweet enough to awaken longing, bitter enough to prevent us from settling. One might think of it as the dim light before dawn. At that hour, the world is visible but muted, familiar yet incomplete. The forms are real, but the colors are not yet true. We are reminded that day is near, but we do not yet live in its fullness. Such is the Christian's pilgrimage. We walk in twilight, awaiting the sunrise. I have sometimes thought that heaven, when it comes, will feel not like a strange new world, but like the long-awaited fulfillment of everything we glimpsed here. It will be the completion of the story we have been reading only in fragments. Every longing will find its object, every riddle its answer, every broken chord its resolution. And when we stand in that light, we will see that the Shadowlands were not wasted years, but the careful shaping of our souls for glory. Imagine, if you will, the first time you heard a great piece of music. Perhaps you could not follow all its themes. Perhaps it seemed puzzling at points. But later, when you hear it performed again, perhaps by a master, you suddenly understand the pattern. What once seemed discordant now reveals its harmony. So it will be with life. The scattered fragments of our days, the joys and the sorrows, the triumphs and the losses, will at last be heard as part of a greater symphony, one in which every note has its place. Until that day, the Shadowlands remain our rehearsal hall. Here, in this dim world, we practice faith. We learn to trust when the light is faint, to love when love costs us dearly, to hope when hope seems fragile. And in so doing, we are fitted for a realm where faith gives way to sight, hope to fulfillment, and love to perfect communion. Let us not despise the shadows, then, but see them for what they are, the gentle veil that guards us until we are ready for the blazing light. For even here, amidst the half-light, we are not abandoned. God walks beside us, shaping, teaching, guiding. And when at last the shadows lift, we shall see his hand in every step of the way. The Shadowlands, my friends, are not our true country. They are but the threshold, and the one who prepares us here will not fail to receive us there. And so, as we draw these thoughts to a close, let us return once more to the truth at the heart of it all. This world, with all its joys and sorrows, is not the final destination, but the place of preparation. The Shadowlands are not to be despised, for they are God's workshop. Here he chisels, here he refines, Here he plants the seeds of eternity within our passing days. But neither are they to be mistaken for home. For home lies beyond, where the shadows will vanish in the presence of the sun himself. What then should be our posture in the Shadowlands? It is the posture of a pilgrim, one who is grateful for each provision along the way, yet never forgets that the journey is not complete. To the pilgrim, a meal is a blessing, but not the banquet. A rest is welcome, but not the arrival. The pilgrim walks on with gratitude, yes, but also with longing, and so must we. Gratitude is vital, for the shadows, though partial, are still good. Every moment of beauty, every act of kindness, every taste of joy is a reminder that heaven is not alien to earth, but is woven into it, like sunlight through stained glass. When we receive these gifts with thanksgiving, we honor the giver, and we strengthen our hope for the day when the gifts will be given in their fullness. Longing, too, is vital, for without it we would settle for too little. Our desires are not too strong, as is often said, but too weak. We are like children, content to make mud pies in the alley because we cannot imagine a holiday by the sea. The Shadowlands, with all their hints and foretastes, are meant to stir in us that holy discontent which drives us to lift our eyes to the horizon. For only when we admit that we are not yet satisfied can we be made ready for the satisfaction that never ends. Do not, therefore, fear the fading of the shadows. The flower that wilts, the song that ends, the friendship parted by death. These are not final tragedies, but reminders that the Shadowlands cannot contain the fullness of what we were made for. They are gentle signals that a greater reality awaits, one where flowers never fade, songs never end, and friendships are never broken. The losses of this world, though painful, are but the labor pains of a new creation. At last, when the veil is lifted and we stand in the presence of God, we shall look back upon our time in the Shadowlands and see that nothing was wasted. Every tear will be redeemed, every joy fulfilled, every longing answered. The journey will be seen for what it was, the careful preparation of a father who longed to bring his children home. Therefore, walk on, my friends. Walk with hope. Walk with courage. Walk with gratitude. The shadows may lengthen, but the dawn is certain. And when the dawn breaks, we shall find that every shadow was, in truth, a pathway leading us into the everlasting light. If these reflections have stirred your heart, I invite you to join me further on this journey. Like this message, share it with those who long for hope, and leave your thoughts so that together we may continue in reflection. And if you would walk with us in more such meditations, do not forget to subscribe, so that you may never miss the next step along the road. For though we walk now in the Shadowlands, we walk together, and together we move ever nearer to the country of the real.